The last signal. Captain Vayrock stood motionless on the bridge of the rescue cruiser Vanguard, his tentacles wrapped tightly around the command rail as he listened to the fading transmission from the surface of New Eden. The frontier colony world on the ragged edge of Concordat space was dying. A massive xeno-swarm, billions of chitinous, relentless creatures pouring down from the northern mountains, had overwhelmed the defenses in just 3 days. Evacuation orders had been issued the moment the first wave appeared. Every available shuttle and transport had been loaded to capacity. Yet one man had refused every direct order to leave. The voice coming through the heavy static was calm, almost conversational, like an old friend chatting on a porch rather than a man broadcasting from the heart of a collapsing colony. This is Radioman First Class Elias Washington, New Eden Central Communications Array. Swarm front is now 6 kilometers out and accelerating. Atmospheric interference is severe, but I'm maintaining the primary relay. All remaining shuttles, you are cleared for final ascent on Vector 7-9er. Coordinates locked and updated in real time. Get our people home safe. Vayrock's mandibles clicked with stress. Status on ground personnel? His first officer, the slender Silvani named Lyra, checked the manifests with trembling frills. 112 civilians made it onto the final shuttles, including 23 children. But Radioman Washington is still at the array. He insists the automated beacon took critical damage, and the manual relay must stay active until the last shuttle clears the upper atmosphere. Vayrock stared at the main viewer where the planet burned. Fires lit the night side like dying stars. The swarm appeared as a moving darkness that swallowed everything in its path. "Order him to evacuate immediately," Vayrock commanded. The reply came back within seconds, warm and steady despite the growing static. "Negative, Captain. With respect, I'm not leaving this chair. The main dish took a direct hit from a swarm flyer 2 hours ago. Automated systems are offline. If I abandon the post now, the last shuttles will lose navlock in this storm, and the swarm will overrun the landing zone before they reach orbit. I can keep her singing for another 40, maybe 50 minutes. That's enough. You focus on those kids up there. I've got the light." Vayrock closed his eyes for a long moment. Humans. Always the humans choosing the hardest path. 3 years earlier, Elias Washington had stepped off the transport shuttle onto New Eden soil as part of the Concordat's Frontier Communications Exchange program. Most species viewed the posting as near-punishment duty, a harsh death-world colony with crushing gravity, violent weather cycles, dangerous megafauna, and isolation from the core worlds. Elias had simply adjusted his worn olive-green jumpsuit, smiled at the welcoming committee, and said, "Looks like home." The other technicians had been openly skeptical. Soft-skinned primate, a Crix engineer named Thorak had muttered. He will last 6 months at most before begging for reassignment to a safer desk job. Elias lasted 3 full years and became a legend among the colony's technical staff. He climbed antenna towers during Category 5 lightning storms to repair dishes. He jury-rigged backup relays using scrap metal, solar panels, and sheer stubbornness when supply drops were delayed. He stayed awake for 72 hours straight during a massive blizzard to keep the colony's distress beacon alive. And when the first warnings of the xeno-swarm appeared, Elias was the one who volunteered to remain at the central array while everyone else rushed to the evacuation shuttles. Now, deep inside the reinforced communications bunker beneath the main dish complex, Elias Washington sat at the master console, surrounded by flickering holographic displays and warning lights. The bunker shook violently as explosions rolled across the nearby valley. Dust and small debris fell from the ceiling. Red emergency lighting cast long shadows across the room. Elias was a mid-50s African-American man, broad-shouldered with the comfortable build of someone who had spent decades working with his hands. Short, salt-and-pepper hair, a neatly trimmed beard streaked with gray, and calm, deep brown eyes that had seen far too many crises. He wore his faded olive-green station jumpsuit with the New Eden patch on one shoulder and an old, I'd rather be fishing patch on the chest pocket. He adjusted his headset, wiped sweat from his brow, and keyed the microphone once more. "Shuttle 7, this is Array Control. I have your signal locked. Adjust heading 2 degrees starboard. Yeah, just like that. You're looking good from up here. Clear skies to orbit. Tell the little ones the old man says dinner's on him when you reach Haven 7. Extra dessert for the brave ones." A young child's voice crackled back, small and afraid. "Mr. Elias, are you coming with us?" Elias smiled softly, even as the bunker trembled again. "Not this time, sweetheart. Somebody has to keep the light on so you can find your way home. Now you be good for your parents, okay? I'll see you all in the stories." He switched channels without missing a beat, voice never wavering. "Ground teams at the eastern perimeter. The swarm is accelerating. You've got approximately 18 minutes before they hit the final barricade. Fall back to the shuttle pad in an orderly fashion. I'm feeding you real-time overlay updates now." While he spoke, his hands moved with practiced efficiency, rerouting power from failing backup generators, manually realigning the damaged main dish using a salvaged servo motor and a jury-rigged winch system, and carefully balancing the ancient fusion cell that powered the entire array. Every few minutes, he glanced at the external camera feeds. The swarm looked like a living black tide swallowing buildings, vehicles, and everything else in its path. His hands remained steady, but sweat poured down his face. The temperature inside the bunker was climbing dangerously as fires raged closer. He took a long drink from his canteen and kept working. On the Vanguard, Captain Veyrak and the bridge crew watched the telemetry in stunned silence. The human had already kept the array operational for 47 minutes, past every simulation's predicted failure point. "How is he still transmitting?" Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Because he simply refuses to stop," Veyrak replied quietly. "That is what humans do." Back on the surface, Elias's voice came through again, slightly weaker, but still calm and reassuring. "Final shuttle is away. All souls accounted for, except one stubborn old radio man. The array is now running on emergency reserves. I'm going to push one last wideband signal on all frequencies before she goes dark. Maybe the swarm doesn't like old Earth music." He chuckled softly, that deep, warm laugh the colonists had come to rely on during long, lonely nights. Then, impossibly, the opening notes of an old Earth spiritual began broadcasting across the dying colony. Raw, acoustic, and utterly defiant. "Swing low, sweet chariot." Elias's voice joined in, slightly off-key but filled with quiet, unbreakable strength. The bunker shook harder. A support beam cracked overhead. Sparks showered from a nearby console. Elias kept singing as he worked, one hand on the manual override lever, the other making final adjustments to the relay. "Coming for to carry me home." A massive explosion rocked the entire array complex. The main feed flickered violently. For several terrifying seconds, the signal dropped completely. Then it returned, weaker, heavily distorted, but still there. "Vanguard, this is Washington. Main dish is failing fast. I've got maybe 5 more minutes at best. Tell the Concordat. Tell them the old man held the line as long as he could. And if anyone ever asks why humans don't run when the math says we should..." Static swallowed the rest of the sentence. When the Vanguard and the full heavy rescue fleet finally fought through the swarm's orbital jamming and reached low orbit, New Eden was a smoking, ruined wasteland. The swarm had consumed nearly everything. But the central communications array, twisted, scorched, and half-melted, was still transmitting a single repeating emergency beacon on the last fumes of emergency power. Armored rescue teams descended in dropships. They found the bunker door partially blown open by the final blast. Inside, amid fallen debris, shattered consoles, and dying lights, they discovered Elias Washington. He was slumped peacefully in the command chair, headset still firmly in place, one burned hand resting on the dead man's switch that had kept the final signal alive. His jumpsuit was scorched and torn. His face and arms were blistered from heat and smoke, but his expression was calm and satisfied. Medical teams confirmed he had passed only minutes before their arrival, from smoke inhalation, severe burns, exhaustion, and the cumulative toll of 3 years on a death world. Yet he had kept the array broadcasting until the very last possible second. Captain Veyrock personally led the honor guard that carried Elias Washington's body aboard the Vanguard. 3 weeks later, the Concordate Oversight Council convened a special session on Centralis Prime. The Grand Chamber was filled with delegates from over 200 species. Veyrock stood at the center dais, without notes. Behind him played the recovered final hours of footage and audio from the New Eden array. The chamber listened in absolute silence as Elias Washington calmly directed shuttles, reassured frightened children, rerouted failing systems, joked with ground teams, and sang an old Earth spiritual while the world literally burned around him. When the recording ended, Veyrock spoke with quiet gravity. "We called humans fragile, short-lived, overly emotional primates. We assigned one mid-50s radio man to a remote frontier colony because no one else wanted the dull, dangerous maintenance duty. And when the end came, every rational species evacuated according to protocol." He gestured to the frozen final image of Elias at his console, still transmitting. He stayed. He sang while the sky burned and the swarm consumed everything. He kept the signal alive with scrap parts, burned hands, and pure refusal to let his people die, lost and afraid in the dark. He bought critical time for 112 souls, including 23 children, to reach safety. A Crix delegate stood, his shell dull with respect. "We watched a soft-skinned Deathworlder do what our most advanced automated systems could not. He held the line when every simulation demanded retreat." Veyrock looked directly into the galactic broadcast cameras. "So the next time any of you sneer at humans for being weak, remember New Eden Colony. Remember the last signal. Because when your perfect evacuation plans fail, when your technology goes dark, and when hope itself seems lost." He let the silence stretch across the chamber. "Send the human with the microphone and the steady voice. He will keep singing long after the rest of us have gone quiet." The chamber remained silent. Concordate proceedings never applauded, but every delegate carried the name Elias Washington forward into the galaxy. In the years that followed, a new unbreakable protocol was adopted by every frontier colony across Concordate space. When a full evacuation becomes necessary, and the final beacon is failing, do not rely solely on automation. Leave one human at the array, because humans do not stop transmitting until everyone else is safe. And sometimes, long after the last shuttle has reached orbit and the fires have died to embers, a faint signal can still be heard drifting through the void. A calm, warm human voice singing, "Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home." The last signal, a reminder that on the edge of the unknown, when everything falls apart, one stubborn Deathworlder with a microphone and a promise can hold back the darkness long enough for hope to escape. And the galaxy would never forget the man who refused to let the light go out.
If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of humanity rising among the stars, please like, comment, and subscribe. New stories are released regularly here on Empyrean Chronicles.